The human couldn't pay rent. So the alien landlady made him an offer he couldn't refuse. The notice was already on the door when Cole Harper got home. Not slipped under it, not taped to it. Pressed into the door itself, like the paper had fused with the metal at a molecular level. The words glowed a faint violet, shifting slightly every time he tilted his head. He had lived in the Velthari residential complex for 2 years, and he still could not read a single character of Velthari script. He did not need to. He knew exactly what this was. He owed 4 months of rent. Cole pulled the notice off the door with both hands. It came away with a sound like tearing static and left a faint shimmer on the surface beneath. He folded it, jammed it into his jacket pocket, and went inside. The apartment was 1 room, a sleeping corner, a food unit, and a window that looked out over the lower city. From up here, on the 43rd floor, the lower city looked almost beautiful. Layers of light bleeding through atmospheric mist, ships cutting arcs between towers, the constant low hum of a civilization running on energy sources Cole barely understood. Down there was the docking district where he worked, or used to work. He sat on the edge of his bed and stared at the food unit. The food unit stared back. It had a small indicator light on its panel, and the light was red, which meant his credit account had been flagged and the unit had locked itself in response. He had not eaten since yesterday morning. Cole Harper was 29 years old, from Flagstaff, Arizona, and he was approximately the 842nd human being to establish legal residency in Velthari territory. That number had seemed impressive when he first heard it. It felt considerably less impressive right now. The door chimed. He did not move. It chimed again, a sound like 2 glass bells struck at slightly different pitches, which was the Velthari equivalent of knocking impatiently. "Mr. Harper?" The voice came through the door panel, clear and unhurried, and carrying that particular quality all Velthari voices had, like sound moving through warm water. "I know you are inside. Your biometric signature is registered on this floor's sensors. I am not going away." Cole closed his eyes for 3 full seconds. He got up and opened the door. Sareva stood in the hallway. She was tall. Next all adult Velthari were tall by human standards, but Sareva had a few extra centimeters on most of them, and she held herself the way people hold themselves when they are used to being the tallest presence in any given space. Her skin had the deep blue-gray undertone that marked her as Northern Velthari, and her eyes were the pale amber that his human brain kept misreading as gold. She wore a long coat the color of deep water, buttoned to the collar, and she was holding a thin data tablet in one hand with the practiced ease of someone who had delivered a great many financial documents to a great many reluctant recipients. She was the building's owner. She looked at Cole the way she always looked at him, not with contempt, not with pity, with a kind of calm, measuring patience that was somehow worse than either. "May I come in?" she said. It was not really a question. Cole stepped back from the door. Sareva walked in, looked around the apartment once with those amber eyes, and remained standing. She did not sit. In 2 years, she had never sat in his apartment, which Cole suspected was a deliberate choice about the power dynamics of the conversation she always intended to have. 4 months, she said. "I know. The automated system sent 3 warnings. I know. And the physical notice I embedded in your door this morning. I pulled it off. It made a weird noise. One of Sareva's secondary eyelids, the translucent inner ones that Velthari closed when they were processing something carefully, slid halfway across her eyes and back. It was the Velthari version of a slow blink. Cole had learned to read it as the expression she made when she was deciding whether something a human said was meant to be amusing. "You lost your position at the docking authority," she said. Cole's jaw tightened. "How do you know that?" "Employment status is part of the residential agreement you signed. Tenant financial changes are automatically flagged to building management." She tilted her head precisely 4 degrees, which he had also learned was a Velthari habit when they were noting something they found relevant. "You were dismissed 6 weeks ago. You did not inform me. I was going to find another position. You have not. I've been looking." "The docking authority has a blacklist," Sarava said. "It is shared among 12 affiliated employers in this district. Your name is on it." She paused. "I looked into your situation before coming here, Mr. Harper. I do thorough research before difficult conversations. I find it reduces unpleasant surprises." Cole stared at her. "I'm on a blacklist. You are." "For what?" "Incident report. You disputed a cargo misclassification in a way that embarrassed a senior Velthari logistics officer in front of his subordinates." She said it without any judgment at all, which was somehow more maddening. "You were correct about the misclassification, incidentally. The officer was wrong. But being correct in a way that causes public embarrassment is considered a significant social error in Velthari professional culture." "The blacklist," was his response. Cole sat back down on the bed. His brain was doing something he recognized as the beginning of real panic, and the kind that started quiet and cold behind his sternum and worked outward. He pressed his hands flat on his knees. "So, I can't work in docking," he said. "Not in this district, possibly not in this city. And I owe you 4 months of rent." "You do?" "And my food unit is locked." Sareva glanced at the unit. Its red light reflected in her eyes. "Yes." Cole looked at the window, at the glittering spread of the lower city, at all those lights that had seemed like opportunity 2 years ago, and now looked like an enormous civilization that had absolutely no need of him and would not notice if he quietly ceased to exist inside it. "What happens now?" he said. Sareva set her data tablet down on the small table by the door. She clasped her hands in front of her and looked at him with that steady, measuring expression. "Not now," she said. "I make you an offer." Cole looked up at her. Her amber eyes were entirely steady. Not warm, exactly, but not cold. Something more precise than either. "I have a problem," Sareva said. "It is a significant problem, and it requires a very specific solution. In 2 years of searching, I have not found a Velthari candidate capable of providing that solution. 2 days ago, I began to consider whether a human might." She paused. "Then your rent notice printed, and I realized the candidate had been on my 43rd floor the entire time." Cole stared at her. "What kind of problem?" he said slowly. Sareva picked up her tablet. The surface lit with a map, dense with route lines and territorial markers, showing a stretch of space Cole did not immediately recognize. "The kind," she said, "like that people in this city have been pretending does not exist for 11 months. Cole looked at the map, at the dark patch at its center where no route lines ran at all. His food unit hummed behind him. The red light pulsed once. "Tell me," he said. Part 2. Sareva's office was on the building's top floor, and it was nothing like the apartment below. Where the residential floors were spare and efficient, her office was dense with information. Maps covered 2 full walls, not projected but physical, printed on materials Cole could not identify, layered over each other in a way that suggested decades of accumulation. Data terminals ran in a long row beneath the windows. Shelving held physical objects, some of which Cole recognized as Velthari cultural artifacts, and some of which he had absolutely no framework for identifying, when the whole space smelled faintly of something like copper and rain. Sireva walked to the main terminal without hurrying. She brought up a display and turned it toward him. "The Kethrani Corridor," she said. Cole knew the name. Everyone who had worked docking in this city knew the name, the way you knew the names of things that were carefully not discussed in detail. The Kethrani Corridor was a navigational route through a section of contested deep space, officially classified as a standard trade route, actually known by anyone with practical experience to be one of the most unpredictably dangerous passages in the sector. 11 months ago, Sireva said, I had a cargo convoy en route through the corridor. 12 ships, 18 crew, and a shipment of materials valued at approximately 400 million credits. She tapped the display. A route line lit up, ran a third of the way through the marked corridor, and stopped. The convoy went silent here. No distress signal, no transponder ping. Nothing. Cole studied the map. How deep into the corridor? Just past the second waypoint, which means they had cleared the worst of the disputed sections and were in what should have been stable space. Sireva's voice did not change. It was as steady as always. But Cole had spent 2 years in proximity to Velthari, and he had learned that steadiness was not the same as absence of feeling. Among Velthari, steadiness was often how you showed the feeling was too significant to let into your voice. 18 crew, he said. Yes. What does the Velthari Navigational Authority say? The Velthari Navigational Authority, Sireva said carefully, has officially classified the convoy as lost to navigational hazard and closed the investigation. Cole turned to look at her. You don't believe that? I believe, she said, that the Navigational Authority closed the investigation in 11 days, which is a speed that has no precedent in their institutional history for a loss of this scale. She held his gaze. Someone wanted that file closed. Why? That is one of the things I intend to find out. Cole looked back at the map. The dark patch at the corridor's heart sat there like a held breath. And where do I fit into this? Sireva moved to a different section of the display and brought up a secondary map. This one showed a network of smaller routes, branching off the main corridor in ways that the official charts did not show. Some of them were marked with symbols Cole did not recognize. The corridor has an unofficial geography, Sireva said. Gaps in the monitored transit lanes. Old surveying errors that were never corrected because correcting them would have required acknowledging they existed. Short routes used by independent operators who do not file official flight plans. She looked at him. Your job at the docking authority was cargo oversight and route verification. For 2 years you processed incoming ships from the outer routes. You learned their patterns. You learned which operators use the unmonitored paths and which paths they use. Cole was very still. You also, Sireva continued, have a reputation among the independent operators in this district. You flagged that cargo misclassification because the contents were being routed to a buyer who should not have had access to them under trade law. 3 of the operators in this building's docking registry told me personally that you were the one human working the authority desks who actually understood how the outer routes worked and actually cared whether the law was followed. That reputation is also why I'm on a blacklist. Yes, it is also why you are the person I need. She set down the tablet. I want to find my convoy. I want to know what happened in that corridor. I want to know who closed the investigation and why. And I need someone who can navigate the informal network of independent operators in this district, because the official channels are compromised. She paused. I need someone those operators will actually speak to. Cole ran a hand over his face. You want me to go into the outer routes? I want you to talk to the people who use them, gather intelligence, build a picture of what is actually moving through the corridor and what has been moving through it for the last 11 months. That's not exactly a safe assignment. No, Scifi agreed. It is not. And the offer is what exactly? You forgive the 4 months of rent? Scifi's inner eyelids moved. The rent debt is erased entirely. You continue living here at no cost for the duration of the assignment. Your food unit is unlocked before you leave this office. You receive a working expense account and a stipend sufficient to operate independently. She picked up the tablet again and turned it to show him a number. Cole looked at the number. It was not the kind of number that changed your life. It was the kind of number that ended one life and started a different one entirely. And, Scifi said, I want you to understand something else. I am not asking you to do this because you are expendable and I have no other options. I am asking you because in 2 years in this building you have demonstrated something I have not found in any candidate I have assessed in the last 11 months. What's that? You do not let consequence stop you from being right, she said. You told a senior logistics officer he was wrong in front of his entire staff because he was wrong, and a falsely classified cargo was going to reach someone it should not have reached. You lost your livelihood for it. You did it anyway. She held his gaze steadily. Whoever is operating in that corridor has survived 11 months of cover-up because the people who got close to the truth decided the consequences were too significant. She paused. I do not think you will make that calculation. Cole was quiet for a moment. The city spread below the windows, all those lights. The 18 crew, he said. Are you looking for survivors? Scifi was very still. That is the question I am most afraid to ask, and the reason I have not stopped looking. Cole looked at the map for a long time, at the dark patch, at the stopped route line. Unlock my food unit, he said. I want to eat something before I give you an answer. The faintest shift crossed Scifi's expression, not quite a smile. Something more controlled than that, and more genuine. She reached over and entered a code into the building management interface on her terminal. Somewhere below them, in a one-room apartment on the 43rd floor, a red light turned green. Part 3. Cole ate. Then he slept. Then he went back upstairs and said yes. Scifi did not look surprised. She did not look relieved either, which he appreciated. She handed him a data chip, a credit chit loaded with the first installment of the expense account, and a list of 6 names. These are independent operators registered to this building's docking bays, she said. 3 of them ran cargo through the corridor within the 6 months before the convoy went silent. 2 of them stopped using the corridor route entirely after the convoy disappeared and have not said why. One of them, she tapped the 6th name, Maf filed a complaint with the Navigational Authority about irregular traffic in the corridor 8 months ago. The complaint was received, logged, and never answered. Cole looked at the 6th name. Droven. A Velthari operator, older registration number, small independent freight vessel. Start with Droven, he said. That was my recommendation as well. He found Droven 3 days later. It took 3 days because Droven was not in the docking bays. He was in a parts exchange in the lower city, in the kind of establishment that existed at the precise edge of the district, where official monitoring thinned out and independent operators conducted the kind of business they preferred to conduct without an audience. It smelled like machine oil and ozone and something sharp Cole couldn't identify. The lighting was the deep amber that Velthari preferred in working spaces. and it made every surface look like it was lit from inside. Droven was older than Cole expected. By Velthari standards, considerably older. His skin color faded to a blue so pale it was almost gray, and his movements had the deliberate economy of someone who had learned a long time ago to spend energy carefully. He was examining a navigation component when Cole walked in, and he did not look up. "I know who you are," Droven said. "The human from the docking authority. The one who is no longer at the docking authority." "That's me," Cole said. "You have been looking for me?" "For 3 days." Droven set down the component and looked at Cole with the kind of eyes that had spent decades assessing whether strangers represented opportunity or threat. "What do you want?" "I want to talk about the complaint you filed with the Navigational Authority, about the Kathrani corridor. The room, which had been making small ambient sounds, seemed to get slightly quieter. 3 other people were in the space. Cole was aware of all of them, not looking at him with the particular attention of people who were listening carefully while appearing not to. Droven did not move. "That complaint was filed 8 months ago. Nothing came of it." "I know. I'm trying to understand why." "Because the Navigational Authority does not want to know what is in the corridor," Droven said. "That is why. And anyone who wants to continue working in this district should not want to know either." "I'm not working in this district anymore," Cole said. "I've got nothing left to lose on the official side." Droven looked at him for a long time. "And on the unofficial side?" "I'm trying to find out what happened to 18 crew. One of them was Sariva's ship captain." Something moved in Droven's expression, very briefly and then gone. "Kyle was on that convoy." "You knew the captain?" 20 years. Droven looked back at his parts table. "Kyle ran independent freight for 15 of those years before Sariva offered him a contract. He was good, careful, would not have made a navigational error significant enough to lose 12 ships. So the official explanation doesn't hold." "No." Droven's voice was flat and certain. "It does not." He picked up the component again and turned it in his hands without looking at it. "What I saw in the corridor, in the weeks before your convoy disappeared, I saw vessels I did not recognize, not using the main transit lane, using the survey gaps." He glanced at Cole. "You know about the survey gaps?" "I do. Small ships, fast. No registered transponders. They moved in groups of 3, always at the same time windows, always on approach from the inner system side." Droven set the component down with careful precision. "I filed the complaint because I thought someone should know. I did not expect the authority to act. I expected them to pass the information to someone who would. And instead they buried it. They buried it in 11 days. Droven met Cole's eyes. 11 days to close an investigation into 12 lost ships. You understand what that speed means? It means someone inside the authority wanted it closed before anyone started asking which inner system parties had ships in that area. Droven was very still for a moment. "You are either brave or you do not understand what you are walking into," he said. "Probably some of both," Cole admitted. Despite himself, Droven made a small sound that might have been the Velthari version of a reluctant laugh. "The ships I saw, 3 of them used a gap that comes out near the old Tethran survey point, about halfway through the corridor. That gap is on no official chart. It is known to perhaps a dozen independent operators in this region." He held Cole's gaze. If something was being moved through the corridor secretly, that is where the movement was centered. What were they carrying? I do not know, but they were running heavy. drives compensating for mass load, and they were careful. More careful than freight haulers are careful. Droven paused. They moved like security vessels, or like people who had learned from security vessels. Cole absorbed this. Is there anyone who could take me to the Tethran Gap? Physically, not just on a chart? Droven looked at him for so long Cole thought he was not going to answer. Perhaps, Droven said finally. If someone were foolish enough, or angry enough about losing a friend. He picked up the navigation component again. Come back tomorrow. Come alone, and bring no documentation of this conversation. Cole nodded. He turned to leave. Mr. Harper, Droven said. Cole stopped. Those vessels I described. The old operator's voice was entirely level. I saw them 4 times before the convoy disappeared. I have not seen them since. He paused. That concerns me more than their presence did. Whatever they were doing in the corridor, they either finished it or they moved it elsewhere. And the only reason to move an operation is because someone is getting close to finding it. Cole stood in the amber light of the parts exchange and felt the cold thing behind his sternum that he recognized now not as panic, but as the particular clarity that comes when you understand a situation is more dangerous than you initially calculated. I'll see you tomorrow, he said. He walked out into the lower city. Above him, 43 floors up, a light burned in a top-floor office window. He did not look up at it. He walked. Part 4 Droven's ship was called the Vithis, and it was smaller than Cole expected, but meaner in the way that old independent freighters got mean, stripped of anything cosmetic, every system optimized for function, the hull bearing the kind of repair patches that told a history of narrow escapes better than any logbook could. They departed on a filed route to a supply depot 3 systems out. The real route diverged from the filed one approximately 40 minutes after they cleared Velthari space, at a point where the monitoring grid had a well-known gap that independent operators had been quietly exploiting for 2 decades. Cole sat in the co-pilot seat and watched the stars shift as Droven made the course correction with the practiced ease of someone who had done it several hundred times. You are not afraid, Droven observed. I'm afraid, Cole said. No, I'm just better at continuing anyway. Droven made the small Velthari sound again. The reluctant one. Cole was starting to understand it as a specific expression, something between respect and exasperation, the sound of someone being forced to revise an estimate upward against their preference. The Kethrani corridor was not dramatic when you entered it. That was the thing that surprised Cole. He had built up an image from docking records and rumor, something ominous and visually striking. And instead, it looked like space looked everywhere. Vast and dark and indifferent, with slightly higher density navigational hazards in the outer regions that the charts marked in amber. The drama was administrative, not visual. The drama was in who claimed authority over this stretch of nothing and how badly they wanted to keep that claim quiet. Droven navigated with minimal conversation, which Cole was grateful for. He used the transit time to work through the data chip Seriva had given him, cross-referencing Droven's description of the mystery vessels with registered ship classes and drive signatures in the independent operator database. He found 3 partial matches, all rated vessels, all flagged in their registration histories as having transferred ownership to entities whose names resolved, after 3 levels of corporate structure, to holding companies with addresses in the inner system. He flagged this on his own datapad and sent it back to Seriva's private address with an encryption key she had given him. Her response came back in 4 minutes. The holding companies match 3 registered entities in the Navigational Authority's logistics contractor list, while Cole stared at that message for a while. The Navigational Authority did not just bury the investigation. The ships responsible for whatever happened in the corridor were registered to contractors working for the authority itself. He typed back, "Does anyone else know this?" Her response, "My lead investigator knew it. He was the one who found the contractor connection. He withdrew from the investigation 4 months ago and left the city. I have not been able to reach him since." Cole put his datapad face down on his knee and looked out at the corridor. Drovin glanced over. "Bad news from your employer?" "Complicated news." In my experience, complicated news and bad news are the same news arriving at different speeds. Drovin made a small adjustment to their heading. "We are 2 hours from the Tethran Gap." The Tethran Gap was a surveying error from 40 years ago, a misalignment between 2 overlapping survey grids that had created a blind channel about 8 kilometers wide and 60 kilometers long, invisible to standard navigation systems because both grids reported clear space in the same coordinate range, and their contradiction was never flagged. You could fit a dozen freight vessels in it, and to the outside universe, they would not exist. When Drovin dropped the Vethys into it, Cole understood immediately what he was looking at. Not ships. The remains of ships. 12 of them. The debris was not scattered the way debris scattered in an uncontrolled incident. It was concentrated, the way debris concentrated when something was disabled in place and then systematically stripped. Sections of hull were missing entirely. Drive units had been removed, not destroyed. Cargo holds had been opened and emptied. Cole's throat tightened. This is where they went silent. Yes. Drovin's voice was very controlled. The cargo was taken. Yes. What was in the manifest? Cole had the manifest on his data chip. He already knew. He needed Drovin to confirm it. Kale's convoy was carrying 300 units of T3 ore, Drovin said. Raw, unprocessed, mined from the Kethrani outer belt. He paused. Tethrine ore has 2 common uses: building material for deep space infrastructure and weapons-grade energy cell components, if processed through facilities that are supposed to require authority licensing. Cole looked at the wreckage. Someone stole 300 units of unlicensed weapons material and killed 18 crew to do it. Drovin's voice finally cracked along one edge, very briefly, and then sealed back. Kyle would have refused to cooperate with a hijacking. He would have resisted. He was not the kind of person who did not. Cole was looking at the debris field and doing the calculation he had been avoiding. 18 crew, 12 stripped ships, no emergency beacons, no bodies visible in the field, which meant they had been removed. People who stripped ships this completely and removed the bodies were people who intended to leave no evidence that could speak. He thought about Sariva's voice in her office. The question I am most afraid to ask. He understood now why she was afraid. But he also understood something else. On the ships had been stripped but not destroyed. Drive units removed, not wrecked. That was not how you disposed of an obstacle. That was how you acquired assets. Drovin, he said, if you wanted to move 300 units of Tethrine ore through restricted space without a licensing trail, what would you need? A processing facility outside authority jurisdiction, Drovin said immediately, and a carrier fleet that didn't show on registered transponders. He paused. Which you could build if you stripped 12 freight vessels of their drive units and navigation systems and repurposed them. Cole looked at the stripped hulls. They had not been disposed of. They had been converted. The operation didn't end when the convoy went silent, Cole said. It started. Drovin turned to look at him. They took the cargo, took the drives, and took the crew, Cole said. and they've been running an unlicensed processing and distribution network for 11 months using converted vessels and forced labor. He felt the cold clarity sharpening behind his eyes. The crew isn't dead. They're crewing ships they can't leave. The silence in the Vaethis was the kind that sat in your chest. You cannot know that, Droven said. But his voice wanted to believe it. I know that destroying evidence is different from converting it, Cole said. And everything here was converted, not destroyed. He pulled out his data pad. I need to send Sariva everything, and then I need to figure out where a 12-ship conversion operation runs out of, and who in the Navigational Authority is protecting it. His pad was already in his hand. He was already typing. Part 5. Sariva responded in 6 minutes. Not with a message. With an incoming call, voice only, which meant she was in a space where visual transmission was a security risk. Her voice came through the Vaethis speaker precisely as always. But underneath the precision was something Cole had not heard from her before. Something taut. You need to be very careful about what you transmit from that location, she said. I used the encryption key. The encryption key protects content. It does not protect transmission origin. If the authority's contractor network monitors the corridor, they now know someone is at the Tethran Gap. A pause. You need to leave the area. Now. Droven was already moving. The old operator had heard enough. He brought the Vaethis about with quiet efficiency, and they were clear of the gap inside 4 minutes, back into the monitored lanes, running the filed cover route toward the supply depot. How long have you known about the contractor connection? Cole asked. My investigator found it, Sariva said. I received his findings 3 days before he disappeared. I have been sitting on that information for 4 months because I did not know who inside the authority was clean and who was not, and moving against the wrong person would warn the right ones. Another pause. What you found changes the timeline. If the crew are alive, they have been held for 11 months. That is the outside of a survivable timeline for human crew members in forced labor conditions. Cole's hand tightened on the pad. How do we move? I have been building a parallel case for 4 months. Financial records, shipping manifests, the contractor registration trails. Everything your investigator found, plus 4 months of additional documentation. Her voice was steady the way structural materials were steady, not because nothing was stressing them, but because they were built to hold. I need one more thing. I need a physical location. Coordinates for where the converted fleet is operating. With that, I can go to the Interplanetary Trade Authority, which is a body with jurisdiction over the Navigational Authority, and which has no connection to the contractor network. Cole thought about this. The processing facility has to be outside authority jurisdiction, but inside reach of the corridor. There's one zone that fits that, and the unclaimed belt section beyond the Kithrani outer boundary. Yes? Sariva said. That was my conclusion. I need confirmation. Droven, Cole said. The old operator glanced over. Is there an independent operator in this district who has run the outer belt routes recently? Someone who would have seen an unlicensed facility if it was running out there? Droven was quiet for 5 seconds. There is one operator. She runs a survey vessel, maps asteroid fields for mining claims. She would have been in that belt in the last 90 days. He paused. Her name is Lena Voss. She docks in Bay 17 at your building. Cole looked at the speaker. Did you know that? I knew she docked there, Sariva said. I did not know her roots, but I know her. A brief silence. She will talk to you. Tell her Sariva sent you and tell her why. She's honest. Okay, Cole said. We come back. I talk to Lena Voss, and if she has coordinates, we move to the Trade Authority immediately. Yes. And Sariva. He stopped. He was not sure how to say what he needed to say. If the crew is alive, the crew includes your captain. You've been sitting on 4 months of evidence and not moving. I understand the caution. But if Kale and the others are on converted ships in that belt, they've been there 11 months. The silence from the speaker was 3 full seconds long. I know, Sariva said. That is why I am not going to wait any longer. Lena Voss was not what Cole expected. She was 34, American, from Portland, and she had been in Velthari territory for 6 years running survey contracts. She was compact and direct, and when Cole found her in the docking bay and said Sariva's name, she took one look at him and said, "Come on," and walked toward the bay office without waiting for him to explain. She had been in the outer belt 60 days ago. She had seen the facility. She described it in precise, professional detail, the way someone described something they had memorized, because they knew they would need to report it someday. It was built into the rock face of a large asteroid. 3 docking arms, a processing thermal signature consistent with heavy ore refinement, and a ring of security drones running a perimeter that had no business being attached to a legitimate operation. She had logged its coordinates exactly because that was what she did. And she had not reported it because she had tried to report it to the Navigational Authority 6 weeks ago and gotten no response. I was going to take it to the Trade Authority next week, she said. I was compiling documentation. Cole called Sariva. Lena Voss transmitted the coordinates. Within the hour, Sariva was on a secure line with the Interplanetary Trade Authority's Investigative Division, a body she had apparently been cultivating a contact at for 4 months in preparation for exactly this moment. The ITA moved in 9 hours. Cole was not there for the operation. He was in the building, in his apartment, sitting on his bed with the food unit making small, contented sounds behind him while it prepared something warm, listening to the city outside his window. Sariva came down at 3 in the morning. She knocked twice on his door, the actual pattern, not the building chime. He opened it. She stood in the hallway, and she was not in her formal coat. She was wearing something quieter, and her face was doing something it had never done in the 2 years he had known her. Something he recognized as the specific expression of a person who had been holding a weight for so long, when they no longer remembered their posture without it, and who had just been allowed to set it down. 11 survivors, she said. Cole let out a breath. Out of 18, she said. 7 were lost in the initial confrontation when the convoy was taken. The 11 remaining were held aboard the converted vessels as navigational crew. She paused. Kale is among the 11. Cole leaned against the doorframe. He did not have any words right now, and he did not try to find any. The ITA has frozen the contractor network, Sariva continued. 4 individuals within the Navigational Authority are under detention. The investigation into the cover-up is open and will not be closed in 11 days. Her voice was completely steady and completely raw underneath the steadiness. 2 things existing at the same time without contradiction. The ore seizure has disrupted a weapons distribution chain that ran to 3 inter-system buyers. That element is now a separate criminal investigation. Cole looked at her. You knew when you put that notice on my door, he said. No, she said. I knew that you were the kind of person I needed. I did not know if what I needed was possible. But you thought it was. Sariva held his gaze for a moment. I thought you might be the kind of person who would make it possible. There is a difference. Cole thought about that. My rent, he said. Something shifted in her expression. The first genuine thing he had seen on her face that was not measured, not controlled, not the careful architecture of a person who had learned to keep emotional weight off their features in professional spaces. "We will discuss the new terms," she said, "when I have slept." "What new terms?" "You solved a problem that I could not solve," Sareva said. "You did it because you do not perform the calculation most people perform when consequences enter the equation. That is not a quality I intend to stop using now that the immediate crisis is resolved." She tilted her head the precise 4 degrees. "I have other problems, Mr. Harper. The outer roots are full of them, and the ITA investigation will need a human liaison who understands how the independent operators in this district think and move." Cole looked at her. At the amber eyes, and the careful posture, and the something underneath both of them that was not warmth, exactly, but was the thing that warmth was pointing at from a respectful distance. "You're offering me a job," he said. "I am offering you a purpose," she said. "And also a job. And also," she added, with something that was not quite a smile but inhabited the same neighborhood, "we will discuss the rent at a reduced rate. You have earned that much at minimum." Cole looked out past her at the hallway, at the city's light bleeding through the windows at the corridor's end. 18 crew had been in that corridor. 11 of them were coming home. He had been 29 years old and broke, and one notice away from being removed from a world that did not need him. And now he was standing in a doorway at 3 in the morning with a Velthari building owner telling him she had more problems and a conviction that he was the right person to solve them. He was still broke. The first payment had not processed yet, but the food unit was green. "Reduced rate and a title," Cole said. Sareva considered this. "Outer Roots Liaison." "That'll do," he said. She nodded once. The precise, controlled nod that, on her face now he understood, was not detachment, but the deepest form of respect she knew how to show. She turned and walked back toward the lift. Cole stood in his doorway and listened to the city, all its lights and noise and indifferent momentum, and felt it shift around him in some way he did not have words for yet. Not smaller, not safer, just different. The kind of different that happened when a place stopped being a place you were surviving in and started being a place you belonged. He went back inside and let the door close behind him. The food unit beeped softly. He sat down and ate.